So welcome to my allotment. It's September and I'm going to take you a tour around my allotment to show you how everything's looking at the moment. If you've not already subscribed to my channel, if you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year for my home garden, my allotment and also my home kitchen. Now some of the things are looking a little bit tired, like these artichokes, but that's exactly how they would look. At some point I'll have to take out the old growth and new growth will come ready for next year. All my cooking apples have all been harvested and they're stored at home. Not the biggest crop in the world, but there's still a few there. And I've just recently harvested off my pears as well. In fact today, so I'm going to be taking those home soon. I've got some quite lovely pears there, you know, not masses of them, but yeah, really quite lovely. So I'll be storing those at home to eat over the coming months. So my rhubarb, although it came on really well, it seems to have finished off a little bit earlier than usual, which is fine. At some point I will put some manure over it to fertilise it for next year to improve the production early in the year. As you can see, we've got some cheeky squirrels around here licking the cob nuts off the trees and leaving them in their wake. We seem to have quite a lot of squirrels around here at the moment, little devils, and they do seem to leave little gifts around my allotment from time to time. I think they must have parties in the evenings when we're not here. So as we move round, the raspberries are well and truly finished. We had quite a reasonable harvest, but the hot weather really didn't do them any good, so at some point I'll have to take out all the old wood, which I've not got round to yet. There really is no rush, but I will have to do that. And we've got the tail end of the blackberries, so I'll have to get a pot out. They're not so big and so voluptuous as we were getting, but they are still perfectly good for putting with, you know, some of those pears that I've just harvested or some of the apples that I've got stored at home. So I can still take a few more off there. As we move down, the leeks are looking quite lovely. I will need to get weeding. Hopefully very soon. I think obviously weeding is one of those jobs that it never ends, does it really? It's not a hard luck story, we love it really. But they're actually coming on really quite nicely. If I'm really lucky, you know, in a couple of months, well, I obviously could start to harvest them off smaller, but I'd rather wait for them to get bigger because obviously I'll get more leek. So hopefully in a couple of months things will start to swell out more, and some of them are already looking quite lovely actually, to be fair. Perfectly lovely and well formed, but they do need a little bit more time before I can start harvesting those. This cover has got lettuce under there. It doesn't actually need to be on there anymore. They've come on really rather well. This was a late sowing of lettuce that I put in, and it's actually come on really lovely. I might or I might not take the cover off. The only reason I'm leaving the cover on is if it does start to get a little bit cooler, it will help them grow a little bit more, so it's almost like a little mini polytunnel. So I do need to obviously do a little bit of weeding in there, but I've got a really nice mixed selection of all different leaves, all cut and come again leaves, which is my favourite. So I'm hoping that that's going to last me up to the frost if I'm really lucky. And some of the curly leaf varieties are actually a little bit frost hardy, not really frost hardy, but they can take a little bit of frost. For leaving a little bit of cover on them, which I think that's actually made my mind up for me, will actually act like a little bit of a, you know, a warmer climate for them, and they're more likely to last just that little bit longer. There's a very chance of them bolting really quickly this time of year because you're not getting the really hot temperatures. It's the really hot weather that makes things bolt, and because it's now starting to cool down, we're starting to come towards, you know, more autumn temperatures. I know you probably don't recognise it, but as a gardener I pick up on those things. Things are going to be less likely to bolt at the moment. So our lovely little wildflower section is looking absolutely fantastic. It might not be the biggest wildflower section in the world, but it's still doing an awful lot of good, and I plan to expand on that for next year. I'm talking to my father-in-law about working together on the bottom bit. As he's getting a little bit older now, he's maybe not always kind of got the time and the energy to do it himself, and he really wants to grow some more flowers. So I said to him, why don't we do it together? And that's something that you could think about. If you or someone you know is struggling to keep up with what they need to do, why don't you do it together? It's fun, and you can share the workload as well and share the produce. So obviously these lettuces here have all but gone now. I kind of hung on to them for a little while those ones were taking over, but now those ones are good for eating. I can now pick up the last of those salad leaves there. The beetroots are doing really brilliantly. So this was my second sowing, and even those, I've got some decent sized beetroots in there. I made some really lovely falafel this week and some beetroot brownies, and I just cooked some and just ate some with salads. There's lots and lots of things you can do. Beetroot brownies, although it sounds a little bit odd, they really are quite lovely. And I've got my carrots underneath here as well. I always keep Enviromesh over my carrots because it really does help with the carrot fly. I will put a link in the description for this because this is one of my must-dos, but the carrots are looking quite lovely and I've had a really good harvest off those already. Yeah, really pleased with those. And the Enviromesh, it's worth the investment. It's a little bit dearer, but I've never thrown a bit away yet because it's so incredibly durable. So while we all try and use less plastic, if you keep reusing something, it's not quite so bad. It's that throwaway stuff that's not very good at all. And this is my first lot of beetroot. Now these are actually really quite beautiful and quite large. So very, very impressed with those. So I'm definitely going to be picking a few more of those off in the next few days. But what I do is I don't pick everything all in one go. I'm not a great lover of pickling beetroot, if I'm honest with you. They will genuinely store quite well in the ground over the coming months. They can bolt, but they don't. I don't find they bolt that easily. And I just pick them as I need them and actually use the garden as my own store cupboard. So rather than pick them all in one go and have to pickle them, I just pick them as and when I need them. I've got a lovely selection of parsley here that I'm using as and when I need to. So that was quite a good addition. So, and I've got my potatoes. Now I will be digging my potatoes up quite soon. They do store very well in the ground, and I don't dig them up too early for the same reason with the beetroot. But with your potatoes, you do need to try and get them out for two reasons, in kind of like, you know, September, October time, because if you don't, the frost could affect them. But the main problem with leaving them in the ground too long is that pests will burrow into them. And when you do dig them, they will be all nibbled. You know, as it starts to get wetter, and I know we don't think it will do, but it will do. The slugs and the wireworm and all sorts of other things will get very busy underground and they will ruin your potatoes. So in the coming weeks I need to get my finger out and I need to get these up and get these stored. I store them in Hessian sacks. I will do a video on that a bit nearer the time as to how I do that. So moving over to the squashes, at the moment I'm having a particularly good year. I've got such a good selection of butternuts, of the little crown princes. I've got some sunshine squashes over here. I've started defoliating. I've not moved over to this section yet. I've mainly started this section over there. As you can see, a little tiny sunshine squash there, but it is still there nonetheless. I'll just move back through and we'll look at these. I've started to defoliate because when the squashes are there and they're fully formed, you want the sun to get to them so they start to ripen. If you have a look, where I've started to defoliate, the spaghetti squashes are starting to yellow, the butternuts are colouring up, and if you look here where I've quite not got to defoliating this section yet, if you notice this one hasn't, so it really does make a big difference. And the reason you want them to colour up is because obviously you don't want to eat them when they're not ripe, because squashes are quite different to courgettes, which I have put in another video, which we'll put a link here for you to look at. While you pick squashes off when they're the right size, so while you pick courgettes off when they're the right size, squashes and pumpkins, they need to mature, you know, for two reasons. One, so they taste nice, and another reason, so that they store. You know, I've probably got 30 or 40 here, and I want these to last me all through the winter and into the spring. And if I don't get the sun on them and let them naturally cure on the plant, they might not keep very well, and that would not be any good. So if you haven't watched that video, then please do so, because it will give you really good helpful hints and tips of how to get them matured really well. So as we move over to the beans, they're doing really well. They didn't initially, but as the season's gone on, they've really picked up, and I'm now getting a really good harvest off of my beans. So I'm really pleased with that, really pleased with that. If we move round, cameraman's finding it hard to keep up with me. My courgettes have slowed off, but they have still got little courgettes on them. So again, while you might not be getting the bountiful crops of courgettes that you were getting earlier in the season, I think we'll all agree it's actually quite nice to have a break, because I had absolutely mammoth amounts. There are still little courgettes forming on my plants. So I'm still feeding and watering those because, you know, there's every chance I'll still get a few courgettes right up until the frost. So why would I give up on them if I can still get some food off of them? So my chard is there. So I need to take off some of the tired leaves. That's a job I need to do. There's always lots of jobs to do on the allotment. Don't feel overwhelmed. There's always loads of jobs for me too, and you just kind of do a little bit at a time every time you come up here. So that's all doing really well, and that will last me all through the winter. I've got my purple sprouting and my Brussels, which hopefully I will have bumper crops for Christmas or before, hopefully. So we'll just have to see. They're looking really, really good, but as yet, no Brussels or no purple sprouting. But it is a wee bit early, to be fair. People don't realise how long it takes for purple sprouting to sprout and how long it takes for Brussels to form. It is the long game, but it is worth it. And my kale, I had to take a lot of the bottom leaves off because they had really bad whitefly, you know, and I wasn't going to eat those leaves. I kind of took a lot of the leaves off. I kept the ones that were edible and have eaten them myself and shared them out with people, and we've got new growth on the top. The trick with those, I think, like I've said before, is to regularly pick them, but because I was on holiday I didn't regularly pick them. The whitefly takes more hold if you don't regularly take the leaves off, and so I unfortunately had to put a few on my composter, but it's all going to go back in the ground, so it's not all bad, is it really? And my broccoli, I think, has well and truly had it now, so at some point I'm probably gonna, I've had loads of broccoli off of it, so I can't complain. I will have to lift this up, dig it out, and I'm probably going to put my garlic in there, which I'll sow around October time. So, and obviously my black currants are well and truly finished. They're all picked, frozen and in the freezer. And I've got an apple tree over here. I need to test whether the apples are ready to come off yet. So I think they need a little bit longer. Let's actually fill one now. You know when the apples are ready to come off because they come off the stem really easily. I think it's a fine balance with leaving them on too long, to be fair, and them dropping off. But you don't want to take them off too early because you want them to know they're still a little bit too. They're not coming off really easy. If they were ready to pick, as you pulled them, they would just come off really easily without much effort. And so they're clearly not quite ready yet, unlike my pears that I have already taken off. Now I hope you've enjoyed the tour of my allotment. I'd love to hear what all you guys are doing. If you've got any questions or queries, as ever, do please put them in the comments.